So let me start welcoming you to a video conference on strategic positioning of open education in universities. I'd like to start with the acknowledgement of country. So as members of the CSU community, we acknowledge the words of the Wiradjuri people on whose land our university was founded. We share their aspiration of Yindyamarra and Hangana, the aim for all of us to learn the wisdom of respectfully living well in a land worth living in. We pay our respect to the traditional custodians of the land on which we live and work. A couple of other people just joined by phone. So I'd like to welcome our guests, Rory McGrail and Wayne McIntosh. Both are chairs in OER, that means Open Educational Resources. Rory is UNESCO Cole ICD Chair at Athabasca University in Canada, and Wayne is UNESCO ICD Chair at the OER Foundation in New Zealand. So that was an awful lot of acronyms. So UNESCO, I think everyone knows what UNESCO is, but Cole you might not know, which is the Commonwealth of Learning, based out of Vancouver, I think is head office, but it's a worldwide organisation working particularly with developing countries. And ICD is the International Council of Distance Education, a worldwide organisation of distance education and open universities. Now we've just been hosting, CSU has just been hosting the ICDE conference for Vice Chancellors this week in Sydney, so that's why Wayne and Rory are actually here, which is fantastic. Wayne spoke at our CSU Ed conference last year in August, so welcome again to CSU, Wayne. And Rory, this is your first time with CSU, although of course Rory and I have met many times at different places around the world. Both our guests are board members of OERU, which stands for OER Universitas, and CSU is a foundation member of OERU. We've been a member for 3 years now. We are committed to putting 2 subjects, CSU subjects, into the open, and our first is Australian Indigenous Culture, History and Contemporary Issues. So a big thank you to our School of Indigenous Australian Studies for this. Getting a lot of ding-dongs as people join in, so it looks like we've got 4 people on the phone now, so I won't ask who you are, you can be anonymous, but I'm just reminding everyone that it's being recorded, so be careful what you say.
What do we call people on the phone? Phonies?
Phonies. Okay, so I'm going to start with some perhaps really basic questions first that might get the discussion going. I'd like maybe Wayne to start with, how would you define open education? What is it?
It's a return to the core values of the academy. Open education is about one of the reasons I joined the education profession, and that is to share knowledge freely. The reason we teach, the reason we walk into the lecture theatre is primarily about sharing knowledge. And the Open Educational Resources movement is really about developing resources that are licensed in such a way that permit reuse and adaptation without restriction. They carry licenses that give the permissions to reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute without restriction, or they may be dedicated to the public domain or resources where the copyright has expired. And we use these resources to support educational activity.
So, well, Rory, how do you think this is different from how universities are operating at the moment?
Well, very different because we have sort of become engaged or even trapped into a ecosphere of closed content, and the commercial publishers have sort of put us into a corner where it's becoming more and more difficult for us to share. And as Wayne noted, sharing is the basis of education. And with the new e-learning and e-textbooks, it is even illegal for you to share your content with a fellow student. So it's under attack, the basic principles of education, which is openness and sharing, and all knowledge is based on previous knowledge. There is no such thing as original thought. all thought is based on what came before us, and all creations have come based on a long history of people sharing their knowledge and skills.
So, copyright is not something that you would be a big fan of then. Can you explain Creative Commons licensing, or does that have problems as well?
I'm a very big fan of copyright. I support copyright. Copyright was brought in to promote learning and the useful arts. What the publishers have been doing over the past 100 years is gradually morphing this into something like protection for authors. But originally, copyright was brought in for promoting learning, promoting science, and in fact it was brought in to limit the rights of the publishers and the printers at that time, and to control it and limit it. But many people today believe that copyright is there to protect the rights of authors. It's not there for that. It is there to promote learning. And we need to get back to that. And the way we do that is use copyright with a Creative Commons license that allows us to share. So as we still own our copyright, we still keep our copyright, but we allow others to share it in an educational environment.
Yeah. And I'm very pleased Rory referred to the origins of copyright, which many attribute to the Statute of Queen Anne. And the actual name of the act was an Act for the Encouragement of Learning. And what it was really about is the commercial publishers were restricting access to knowledge. And Queen Anne said, no, this is not for the benefit of society. You have an obligation to place 3 copies in the public libraries so that the citizens would always have access to this knowledge. And of course, in an industrial age, this is the way that you provide access to the public to knowledge, is through the library systems. But in a digital age, we have to find ways in which to do this, and we do this through Creative Commons. Creative Commons is copyright. By licensing artifacts under Creative Commons license, the creators are not sacrificing their copyright. They still own their copyright, but what they are doing is they're giving certain permissions in advance that give others, and there are millions of people around the world that want to share. And these are the individuals that we work with in widening access to more affordable education futures.
So when you say the people we work with, and we're all involved in OER Uni, so Wayne, would you like to explain how OER Uni works?
So the OER Universitas, or OER
I should say Universitas. Is that a problem that we say I shouldn't say uni?
It's not a problem for us. It's an interesting, and I think the situation is the same in Australia. The concept university is in many national acts, higher education acts, a restricted concept.
Yeah.
And when we were conceived, the foundation meeting called us the OER University, but always lowercase u. We were referring to the original Universitas Magistrorum et Scholarum, a community of scholars. It was never intended to be a reference to an institution as such.
And like universal, a world community of scholars.
Exactly, in terms of the generic English language. Yeah. But the term is restricted in the New Zealand Higher Education Act. And in the interest to avoid confusion, and in the interest of recognizing the growth of our network, because we have a number of non-teaching partners in the network, the board took a decision to change the name to Universitas, which we thought, but we have no objections to using our name, which is openly licensed. Of course, you can create a derivative work and call us the OER Uni. We're quite comfortable with that.
Thank you. So, having interrupted you about the name, how does it work?
So, quite simply, we have an international network of accredited universities from 5 regions around the world who join the OERU and agree to assemble just 2 courses based entirely from OER and open access materials. And by doing that, we are able to provide access to learning opportunities to learners at no cost to the learner. The courses that our OERU partners assemble, and Rory will talk about the assembling bit because it's quite important in this space, provide assessment services which are mapped to real university credit, formal academic credit. And in this way, we can provide more affordable pathways because our partners do charge a fee for the assessment services, which in most cases are cost recovery. But we do not object to any partners generating new revenue streams from our model. And so this is a way in which we are able to disaggregate components of the university delivery system in a way to widen access, particularly for the learners that will be excluded from the privilege of a tertiary education. I mean, we know conservatively estimated by UNESCO, Commonwealth of Learning and others, that we're anticipating an additional 150 million places that need to be created for learners who will not have a seat in tertiary education, but that are qualified to enter the higher education system. That's the equivalent of building 4 sizable universities, roughly the size of Charles Sturt University, every week for the next decade. And so the conventional model is not going to be able to serve these learners. But I might just hand over to Rory to reflect on the notion of assembling from OERs.
Yes, we need to get away from the idea of creating courses. There is more and more content becoming freely available under open licenses on the internet, and we need to take advantage of that rather than creating and recreating the same type of content. And so we need to think in terms now of assembling courses, of taking content that is available and repurposing it or remashing it, putting it together and creating courses that way, or taking a full course and using it as it is. And instead of spending months and months creating your own course, is take a course that's freely available on the internet as an open educational resource, plug it into your system and use that as is, and maybe tweak it or change it a little bit however you feel like. And we've got to change our mentality in order to start thinking in this way in terms of reuse and assembly of courses.
So it's a sustainability issue, isn't it? I mean, you can't keep creating 4 new campuses a week around the world and to keep recreating intellectual works such as, Maths 101 or Physics 101 seems an awful waste of time as well, when we could be getting on to other things if we were to reuse, remix, adapt, recredential, and so on. So it's part of a sustainability goal as well, is that right?
Yes.
Absolutely. And the world over, certainly in terms of higher education, is in crisis. In terms of sustainable funding, I'm not aware of any country, in fact, that has been experiencing, certainly within the public funded education sector, an increase in government contributions to supporting education. It is, of course, a sustainability issue. From the learner's perspective, we know in the US, for example, the highest accumulation of debt is student debt. It's significantly larger than credit card debt in the US. In my own country, New Zealand, students are deciding not to study for the fear of the student debt that they are accumulating. It is a sustainability question on both sides of the fence. And altruism is a good thing. It's even better if you can figure out how to pay for it. And that is the design of the OERU model.
Yes. I think you've called it smart philanthropy.
Smart philanthropy, because the lessons that we are learning through the implementation of OERU, we are able to plow back into making our own university systems more efficient and more effective.
Yes.
So
this is like, why would a university give content away for free? You think there's some really strong reasons, not just for the social justice issue and for the student to have a more affordable education, but there are real reasons why universities would benefit.
Could I respectfully correct you on this, Sandra? Is when you give your courses, you do not give them away.
Okay.
You give them, you still have it. You are giving nothing away.
Yeah.
And particularly if they're digital.
That's especially because
Yes.
of digital. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. You lose nothing by making courses open.
So what would I say to the Vice Chancellors who are at the ICDE conference this week as to how could they reconcile where most universities are at now, where they have to have business models, where they depend on income from students because it's not in most countries free anymore. How do they reconcile being a fee-paying institution as well as giving it away?
So, I mean, we've spent quite a lot of time at the OERU developing open business models. It was a key objective, strategic objective of our network from our founding partners, or the founding partners meeting back in February 2011. And we arranged 2 regional consultations, a consultation in North America, as well as an Oceania consultation with guidance, support and facilitation from Creative Commons International, who are doing a lot of work around open business models, to develop this, a sustainable open business model for the OERU. And it's really quite simple. On the one hand, higher education is not a corporate exercise. I'm not in any way suggesting that we are, corporate entities. However, a corporate entity that is able to get inputs in terms of your factors of production at no cost, without any restrictions in terms of the fees that you would charge, in terms of generating profit, would be crazy not to use those inputs. Similarly, in the OERU context, these are high quality open online courses that have been assembled from leading institutions around the world, which Charles Sturt Uni, if you don't have that curriculum in place, could adopt locally without spending a cent on development cost. And you could teach these courses to full fee, full paying students on site. And by freeing up the time that academics would have spent on assembling these courses, that time can be reinvested into other productive activities. For example, research, or providing better student support. And in that respect, it's a far more efficient and sustainable model. I mean, replicating resource that is scarce is not a smart thing to be doing from a sustainability perspective. So our model is a simple one. The central infrastructure that runs the OERU is funded from membership fees from our partner organizations. That's how we fund the central operations. The OER Foundation, which is the legal entity that oversees this, doesn't generate any revenue at all from student services. We have designed the model in ways that any partner institution that wants to generate new revenue from the OERU can do so. Some institutions, and our input evaluation survey has indicated that there are 2 generic clusters. There are a group of institutions that are purely doing this for social justice reasons. They're saying, we believe this is a good thing. We're happy to contribute just 2 courses. That's fine by us. It's not going to, undermine our business. This is part of it's part of our social service mission. Yeah. Every publicly funded institution has a social service mission. But there are also a cluster of institutions in our network that are looking to the OERU model as generating new revenue for value-added services, which might be tutorial support on demand, for example. It might be to supplement and augment the curriculum in areas where enrollment is too low to cost-effectively provide those courses locally. So there are a number of opportunities, and this is the power of the open model. It's mutually supportive of multiple strategic agendas and fiscal agendas. The other interesting difference, and I might just mention this before and then I'll stop rabbiting on.
Grab it away.
The other very important differentiator with the OER Foundation, we have no accumulated debt. We have no accumulated debt moving into this era where we are launching a full first year of study leading to 2 exit awards.
So we're not going to go bankrupt like
We are not going to go
other
bankrupt.
potential ventures.
We don't have to figure out how to pay back hundreds of millions of dollars worth of venture capital. We already have a 76% sustainable revenue stream. That's the OER Foundation. So tongue in cheek, I would suggest to vice chancellors that don't want to do this, they better start taking a closer look, because we are the new competition.
I was going to ask you, Rory, a bit more about the assessment side, because you've written some fantastic reports for the Commonwealth of Learning around assessment in an open context, and how that reduces the fee for university education for students, and also RPL might be something else, recognition of prior learning, that you might want to talk about.
Yes, at our university we have a very robust RPL, recognition of prior learning program, and we also have challenge for credit. So as a student can say, well, I know second year biology, let me take your exam. They take our exam or assessment. It's not necessarily just an exam, it may be a paper. And they take that, and then we give them the credit. If they pass, we give them the credit. They don't have to take the course from us. Yeah. And we've been doing this for many years. And we get about 80 to 100 students a year taking these courses. And we charge too much for it, to be honest with you. And the reason we charge so much, it's about $370 for Canadians, $700 for people outside of Canada.
But that's still far less than having to pay the whole course fees.
It is, but it's half the cost. And the reason we have it so high is we don't want students to do that. We want them, we want them to come and take our courses.
Yes.
But we're rethinking it, and we have a new president now, so we've been on hold for 2 years, and he's just come in, so we don't know exactly how we're going to do it. But the idea is this, is that we can generate new revenue, by reducing the price to under $200, but that we have we develop a very efficient assessment service. And we are doing that. For example, we have automated assessment now, computerized assessment for maybe 20 to 30% of our courses, and that's growing every year. And some of our biggest courses in business, they are all automated.
So by automated, do you mean quizzes, or do you mean something better than that?
Quizzes and essays and things like that.
Sorry,
it's not just multiple choice, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
And
so how is an essay automated?
There is the automated marking systems now actually are better than humans.
Right.
It's like the cars now. The new self-driving cars are better than humans. We are being replaced. This is part of it. But and one of the arguments from our faculty is, look, if this increases and all of these learners start taking our challenge for credit, they won't take our regular courses. You are going to bleed our regular courses. And our response to that is it's better that we bleed our regular courses rather than other universities doing it, because this is coming and it's becoming part of what the world is like. And to give an example of what not to do, Kodak used to be the largest camera company in the world, and they made nearly all their revenue was from selling film. And they invented the digital camera. They were the first to do it. They suppressed it.
Oh.
They did not because it would affect their revenue stream. They said it will bleed our regular revenue stream. And what happened? There is no Kodak today. It's gone. And so I think that we have to be very realistic about it. And instead of us not doing it, and then we start whining about other universities taking away our students, I would rather that we do it and have other universities whine about us taking away their students.
Yeah. And in relation to this conversation, certainly in terms of the sort of the scenario planning work that we've been doing with the OERU, we are confident that the OERU is serving a discrete market. And by that I mean the learners that are coming to our regional-based institutions that have sufficient money, they can get student loans, that are sufficiently privileged to engage in university study on campus will continue to do this. The markets that we are focused on are the learners who don't have the money to get into the system. And wouldn't it be better if we, as publicly funded education institutions, can extend the efficiency or effectiveness, if you will, of our taxpayer-funded institutions in widening access to learners who would never have been able to afford an education? And those are the markets that we are targeting. The OERU is designed to, I don't believe in the rhetoric of the death of universities, and I mean, this is a bunch of Silicon Valley rhetoric. I don't buy into that rhetoric. In fact, universities are one of a handful of institutions that survived the Industrial Revolution. I suspect these institutions are going to survive the knowledge revolution rather well. But there will be changes.
But we still like to wear gowns that are from the medieval days.
Exactly.
Graduation.
Some traditions you shouldn't touch.
Yes.
Exactly. But the OERU is on the side of helping publicly funded institutions, survive this revolution if it is one.
So Rory, back to Athabasca. Are there other venues where your university publishes open courses, or is it all through OERU? Do you have a multi-channel strategy to open?
Actually, we do. We have now about 15 open education resource courses.
Mm-hmm. And by courses we mean subjects, not full programs.
And we are teaching them. And to give you an example, we teach accounting to 2,000 more than 2,000 students every year.
In the open?
Yes, and we have switched from a textbook that costs $250 to an open education resource textbook. That has saved the university 250 times 2,000 every year. So that's a huge amount of money.
You must maybe just explain why that is a saving in terms of the textbook for the university,
because our university, we put the cost of the text into the student into the tuition fee.
So it's not a fee to the student, the textbook. It's not a separate
no,
cost.
We call it a student service fee related to tuition, because previously in the 1990s you could not claim textbooks on your income tax. So we made it part of tuition, and then they could claim it on their income tax. But in the meantime, the government has changed the law, and now they can. So there is now pressure from our students, rightly so, to say, look, you've saved $250, give that back to me. And this is what our students are saying now. And we're in a quandary of how we deal with it, because we've learned to really enjoy having that revenue. And
so open textbooks seems to be a very big movement in Canada. There's a couple of provinces that have really gone into it. Yours, I think.
In British Columbia led our most western province, and now they have over 150 full open course textbooks at the first and second year university and college level. We have just produced in our province about 18, which we are putting on the BC campus website, and we're collaborating them. We signed a memorandum of understanding between 3 provinces, and a 4th province has come in, Manitoba, and just this last June Ontario, the largest province in Canada, has started to promote and support open education.
So how do open textbooks get created in Canada then, for example?
We give a grant to a teacher to create the textbook. And,
by themselves or in a consortium or?
Both, yep. Sometimes it's been one professor, sometimes it's been a team. To give an example, we are finishing up a textbook at Athabasca University on beginning Spanish. And this was led by Athabasca, but in a consortium of 5 universities, Spanish teachers across Canada. And so that's an example of them working together. And they got a very significant sum of money to do that. And we have other ones in psychology and business and workplace training. And so they're getting the money up front. And people have said, well, OER, what about the poor authors? We're paying the authors to do this, and we pay them up front. Whereas, and they keep their copyright.
Rather than waiting for royalties that may or may not be
the publishers don't pay them or give them a paltry sum at the beginning to make them interested. They must give their copyright to the publishers. And then maybe they'll make some money on royalties. Maybe they won't. Most teachers who do this don't make very much money.
No.
On.
I don't know anyone driving a Porsche out of their textbooks.
Yes.
Oh, Rory is a top-selling author.
Yes, I think you said the other day, 360 copies.
Yes, that's right. I'm a top-selling author, 326 copies. I'm not up to the 360 mark, but the publishers loved my book because they sold that many copies. And to be honest with everyone, I'm shocked that there were 326 people in the world who would buy a book on learning objects.
We're trying to find models whereby, some publishers, you publish with them for the first 2 years, and after that you get it back and publish in the open.
Yes.
Different models, mix and match with it.
But the other, just in relation to the open textbook, and it's all part of an ecosystem, because the OERU benefits from the work that the open textbook initiatives, for example, at BC Campus have been working with. I mean, BC Campus is one of our partners, is one of the non-teaching partners. But we have a number of courses in the OERU that are actually based on these open textbooks. So, for example...
I was going to ask for some examples of courses, so that people that are listening in to this interview, what are some examples of courses that the OERU is
So one of
offering?
the courses, which in fact is maybe a good example, it's a course we're currently developing now at the moment, which will be completed by year end, and available for the first year of study, is a first year level course in project management, an introduction to project management. It's an interesting course because not only will learners be able to get credit towards a first year course in the Certificate of Higher Education Business Studies, which is offered through the University of Highlands and Islands. It also has certification options through the project management institutes. So for example, the PMI certifications, and this is not my area, but from those that know about these things tell me that you can have your professional development requirements in terms of keeping up to date with things, the number of hours you should be doing, actually reduced by keeping your skills upgraded, and by taking the project management course would actually qualify to towards the PMI certifications. But this particular course is we selected the project management textbook that was developed by BC Campus. And we've got a wraparound model where the online course guides the learners through a number of activities and learning challenges that are based on this open textbook. So that's a good example of how we are using the ecosystem of open to build courses. And so, for example, CSU could take this Intro to Project Management course and plug it in, if you don't have one already, at first year level, get your necessary faculty board approvals for the introduction of a new course, and you can have this course running. It wouldn't have cost you a cent.
So this ecosystem is very different from universities, for example, that have decided to run MOOCs on Coursera or FutureLearn or edX or whatever, because usually they have to pay quite a lot to get a product that's high quality production value. They have to do it to a template that Coursera or whatever demands. And then there are the IP issues as well. Is that right? I think, Rory, you've usually got a lot to say about
Yes.
those companies.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that the MOOC concept, massive open online courses, is Canadian. We did it
Yes.
first. We did it in 2008, and I think a lot of people think it's American because nothing happens in the world until it happens in the United States. But the truth is it happened in Canada first. So that's number one. Now, the idea of a MOOC, I think, is wonderful, is mass education. And we've got to build on this concept. This is extremely important for us if we're going to meet the UNESCO Millennial Goals and meet the needs of these 150 million students capable of post-secondary education who can't get it. So yes, we have to look at mass education, and MOOCs is going to be one of the way that does it. But the way Coursera is doing it, they're doing it with commercial content. They maintain their copyright without sharing. And we, on the other hand, are aiming to reach masses of students, but through sharing. And we don't mind. In fact, we would support people to even take it out of take the content out of our OERU and use it locally and build up others. And if somebody can make money on that, that's wonderful too. So we are open and these are closed. Now, another problem that we have with the Coursera especially is that when you agree to use the Coursera material, you must click on I agree, and you have agreed that you cannot use their credential for any accreditation by any official university or college. Well, the whole point of getting a credential is so as you can use it at another college.
Yeah.
Or,
Credit transfer.
Yes, this is the whole point of it. So to me, your degree or your certificate, whatever you get from Coursera, is useless. And I think that people should be aware of that.
Yeah.
And in fact, that raises the question of how do OERU learners become a graduate? When are we going to see our first graduate?
Well, we actually do have a graduate. One of our very first prototype courses was developed here in Australia. I'm sorry that we couldn't say it was developed in Canada, but it was.
But it was in Queensland.
Well, it wasn't the United States.
But there's a lovely ending to the story, Rory, and I'm sure you would appreciate the ending of this story. It was a first-year level course in regional relations in Asia and the Pacific, which was assembled by the University of Southern Queensland. And a very interesting course, which was actually based on what Jim Taylor has called the pedagogy of discovery, or free-range learning. You can imagine a course, the Pacific region. Again, this is not my discipline, but there's some 45 different countries that are classified as part of the Asia-Pacific region. Now, it wouldn't be possible to prescribe a closed textbook that would cover 45 countries. Because the pedagogy of discovery is about guiding learners to source open resources in pursuit of their own interests. So if a learner wanted to focus on Malaysia, around the economies in Malaysia, they could do so. Whereas another learner might want to focus on tourism in Canada, which is also part of the Asia-Pacific region, right? So this is possible. It demonstrates a model which you can actually deliver a higher quality learning experience to learners that you cannot do with the closed model. It's just not possible. Now, this learner, Michelle Aragon, she was based out of Penticton, which is in the Kelowna Valley, in Canada.
Oh,
so
Canada.
And she applied her credit towards her award at Thompson Rivers University through a
Which
credit,
is in Canada.
which is in Canada. So Canada is leading again, I'm afraid.
So she'd almost finished a degree, but needed another course or subject, and she did this open subject, got the credit from USQ, and then applied it at Thompson Rivers. So she's become a graduate.
She's become a graduate. So while we don't have large numbers of learners yet,
because they don't graduate from OERU, I guess that's the other thing to say.
Exactly. Yes.
We're not a university. We're a universitas.
Exactly. And so the awards are conferred by the receiving institution that is transferring credit or courses that are assessed locally towards those credentials. Now, another difference between ourselves and what frequently happens in the US is we've been reticent to market a product that doesn't exist yet. We feel as a charitable organization it's not appropriate to be marketing exit awards until we are guaranteed that those exit awards are in place.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that has characterized the OERU, it has been the rigor of our planning. And while it might have, it's taken us 7 years to get to this point, the attention to the planning and credit transfer and how this all operates has been an investment that has been well worth the effort, because we are now in a position we have a model in place that will enable this credit transfer to take place for these exit awards. And this is why we can now launch the first year of study next year and be able to market to the world with confidence that our learners will get exit awards, unlike Coursera. Coursera is most welcome to take any one of our courses and run it on their platform. We don't object whatsoever. Any educator in the world using our technology by pressing a button would be able to host an online version of our course on any WordPress instance that they can host on a free gear. We have no problem with this whatsoever, because we know that the value add of the OERU model is around the assessment model and with the pre-articulation agreements. And those are the models which the corporate providers are unable to respond to. I mean, I find it interesting that collaborations like Open edX, which I understand is also a not-for-profit initiative, has recently registered a patent on MicroMasters. And I wonder what the motivation of a non-profit entity is to register patents on new words for credentials.
Yes.
At the OERU, we work with micro-credentials, and we're not intending to patent them.
Well, I was going to ask you about micro-credentials. I mean, some people may not have heard of that. What do we mean by micro-credentials?
It's a credential that's smaller than...
It's micro, yeah.
A small credential.
So one of the things that we have been learning through our implementation with the OERU is the challenge of how do you manage the differences in course size across international and provincial boundaries. I mean, and so, for example, in Canada, a standard 3-credit course in Canada equates to roughly 120 notional learning hours, whereas the course equivalent here in Australia is 160 notional learning hours compared to New Zealand's 150 notional learning hours. The United Kingdom, for example, is typically 200 notional learning hours. They talk about modules as opposed to courses. And so one of the things we had to think about carefully within the OERU was how do we articulate amongst these different systems. And the solution we've come up with is to assemble each course in OERU as micro courses. So the North American equivalent is built up of 3 micro courses, roughly of about 40 notional learning hours each. We've established through our work that you need about 40 hours to have something that is sufficiently coherent to be able to assess in a way at the different levels. You start going anything smaller than that, the validity and reliability of this assessment becomes a challenge. So we're working with micro courses of roughly 40.
And we kind of know from the MOOC experience that really long MOOCs don't work as effectively. That the participation trails off pretty quickly after 4 weeks. And 4 to 6 weeks seems to be the maximum that people will sustain.
Our data shows similar trends as well. And so you can see now how the system works. The micro course becomes a currency of course size. So in the North America, it's 3 micro courses. In Australia and New Zealand, it's 4 micro courses. In the United Kingdom and many parts of Europe, it will be 5 micro courses. And with this micro course model, obviously you could offer micro credentials, because this is assessed learning that is mapped to real credit. And so in theory, if an institution wanted to do this, they could have a micro credential for 1 credit, which gives learners flexibility, working around full programs, because we're working with very different learners here. Might have a gap over the next 3 weeks to go and focus on learning because they can organize their lives around this, but wouldn't necessarily have the time to spend 12 weeks. But the learners can now assemble over a period of time the number of micro-credentials that would be required for full course credit.
I like the way you call that, currency. It's the currency of university is micro-credentials.
Yeah.
Is Athabasca doing any micro-credentialing other than in OERU? I mean, are you doing it in other ways at Athabasca?
We have very few micro-credentialed courses, but we do have a few, and they're generally ones that lead how can I put it, that professionals need to maintain their certification. Yes. In architecture, in teaching, or whatever, that they just need to keep up in order to maintain their status in the profession. And so that makes sense, and they're willing to pay for the course. So yes, we do have them for that, and that is the main purpose for them.
So it's like continuing professional accreditation.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So another example, Otago Polytechnic in New Zealand has launched a rather impressive prototype around micro-credentials, which has been seen as a revenue generation opportunity for the institution around professional development and certification. And so learners can be assessed for micro-credentials and the corresponding open badges, which are actually mapped to credit, targeting the professional development market. But hey, if one of these learners would think, oh, I might actually be interested in a formal qualification in this area, through the accumulation of these micro-credentials, they can actually get transcripted credit, which maps to a Bachelor of Applied Management or whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah.
And we would do that along with our RPL, the recognition of prior learning, and they can either be mapped together or they can accumulate the credits and put them on. But in general, for a normal course, we would wait till they got the 3 credits, because that's the norm 3-credit course. And that's because of the expense of administering 3 tests rather than 1.
And maintaining the data on the student.
Yes.
Because they're not an enrolled student at the university.
That's right.
They're enrolled in a micro-credential, which is not on the formal system of the
They're
university.
not even enrolled in the micro-credential. Actually, they can go do 1, 2, 3, and then they come to us.
Assessment. Yes.
And then they enroll in the university.
Correct. Yeah.
So one of the other micro-credentials, flows off your tongue quite easily these days. And another one terminology that you use is open boundary courses. Do you want to explain what open boundary courses are in the OERU context?
Sure. An open boundary course is an OERU course which is reused for full fee, full paying students on campus getting full tutorial support. Learning in parallel with OERU learners who are taking the course for free, who don't get tutorial support. Now you might be asking yourself, why on earth would you do this? It's interesting. Many of our partner institutions are regional-based institutions. What this model affords us is the opportunity for regional institutions to be able to market an international, intercultural learning experience. I mean, CSU could say, well, come to us. We will provide you with this international, intercultural learning experience, because typically we attract learners from 50 to 90 different countries when we run one of these courses. And we use interesting technologies that would that enable these two groups to interact with each other without transgressing any sort of IT policies.
Because they can't come onto the university's LMS.
Exactly, and nor should they have an expectation to do that, because they are paying full tuition and they are entitled to getting tutorial support. Free learners won't be getting that tutorial support.
Yeah.
But one of the things we do, for example, is you can designate within your learning management system an open forum, where you tell the learners, this is an open forum. If you post to this forum, it will be harvested for the open web. If you post to this forum, you are openly licensing this, and if you post to this forum, we are sharing it, we're going to share it with the world. And because the OER Foundation is a trusted partner of our partner institutions, we will have a student robot, if you will, sitting in the LMS. And all that robot does is, if somebody posts to the open forum, we will harvest that and replicate it on our servers, because the learner and the institution has given us permission to do that. And it's appropriately licensed, so we can do that. And then we integrate that post into our aggregated timeline with the interactions and the technology tools we are using, so that the free OERU learners would be able to see what somebody has offered to share. And that's how the intercultural experience takes place.
So they can see, but can they also interact with
they can interact in our systems. And what we would typically do is we would integrate into your learning management system the view of this live course feed. So we harvest interactions from distributed technologies on the web, blog posts, microblog posts. If a learner submits an item to our resource bank, which is all running on open source software, your learners would be able to see that in your closed system.
So that sounds like an incredible valuable way to help our students, particularly in regional universities, become global citizens, because they're interacting with people all around the world and they wouldn't normally have had that
Absolutely.
And so you've got some examples of that happening, like I think Canterbury University?
Yes, we ran a prototype with the University of Canterbury in 2012. It was a micro-open online course on scenario planning for educators, which was integrated into a master's program that Professor Nikki Davis runs at Canterbury, called Change with Digital Technologies in Education. And we ran this prototype with the University of Canterbury, testing all these technologies so we know it's doable and it works. The data that has come out of this exercise is we didn't see the attrition rates of the sort of free learners compared to learners studying for full academic credit.
So they stayed.
They stayed, and we have the data to show this. Now that's a small experiment. I don't think we can say that this is necessarily generalizable until we do more work and more research in this space. But the hypothesis, at this phase of our journey, is that the levels of engagement of learners studying for academic credit keeps the free learners interested, because it's authentic, sort of conversation. It was a very useful experiment, and we are progressing this in big ways. We are targeting, and this is a decision that the OERU Council of CEOs took this year, that we are going to prioritize the development of the learning in a digital age, a course which is a first-year course that will be delivered as an open boundary course. And one last comment on open boundary courses. This is why we have no objection to Coursera reusing our courses at all, because they will not be able to replicate the open boundary course model. And that is our strategic point of difference.
That's interesting. Well, now, you mentioned the word strategic. We've got 2 minutes left, so I was going to give Rory the last
Absolutely.
say. About strategic positioning of open education within a university like CSU. Have you got any words that would reassure people about why this is the strategic thing to do?
Funny you should ask. The OER, I came to OER not from the view of their free resources. I came to OER because I was heavily involved in the learning object movement in the 1990s. And what we found was that if content is restricted by copyright, that you cannot collaborate and share, and you cannot use the material in the way you would like to use it. The restrictions basically stopped you. Since then, with the e-books, commercial e-textbooks coming on, they've put in digital rights management, otherwise referred to as digital locks. And these locks prevent you from using that content the way you would like to use it. They stop you. You can't copy, paste, highlight. You can't format change. You can't mash it or mix it with anything else. You can't augment it. You can't print it out. And they take away your rights for fair dealing. And so you find yourself in a situation where it's impossible to really use this material in an educational environment. On top of that, they put in a restrictive license, which when you click on I agree, you've agreed that you cannot do any of those things.